Thank you for coming to tonight's screening of My Friends, the Comedians. Please ensure that you have your cell phone silenced. Enjoy the show.
Hello, fellow joke enthusiasts, comedy connoisseurs, and champions of chuckle. Welcome back to the show. If you're new here, my name is Jacob Marscola, and this is My Friends, the Comedians, a podcast where I sit down with a friend and discuss the mysterious, delirious, and unserious realm of comedy. Sitting across from me is a friend of mine who just so happens to be a comedian. He's a professor here at Villanova, has taught numerous classes, has taught numerous amounts of my friends and myself. He teaches a one-credit stand-up course here. And no, he's not just a random professor that I pulled off the street. He does happen to be a friend of mine, I'd consider. This is Dr. John Paul Spiro.
Hello, Jacob. I was going to begin by saying I don't know if I'm either your friend or a comedian, so I'm glad you introduced me at least as your friend.
So here's the thing is that a lot of people on my show have been like, I think even Frank, which is an episode you listened to, was like, am I even a comedian? You're the first person that's been like, am I his friend? Which, you know what? A student and a professor.
Exactly.
It's a weird...
You don't want to say friend.
You don't want to say friend, but, you know, in the context of this show, it's whatever.
It's true.
It's true.
After you've graduated, we can be friends.
I was going to say, I'm pretty much done with my classes, so I might as well be graduated.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
okay. Today we're friends.
Today we're friends, but not the rest of the week. Only on Wednesdays am I friends with you.
Right.
I had a teacher. It's weird. I get why, because being a college professor takes a little more.
Too much.
But a teacher is in high school. But I keep calling them professors, but I'm like, well, technically they're not professors. But I had a teacher in high school who, like, the minute we all graduated, was like, all right, you guys can all follow me on Instagram if you want. And we had all been like, can we please follow you on Instagram? Because he's, like, the most interesting person in our school. And so it was really fun to, like, break that barrier. So I'll be trying to find your Instagram.
It's all cats.
It's all... My girlfriend found it. Trisha found it.
Oh, yeah.
And was talking about how it's all cats.
It's all cats.
It's all cats. And your profile picture is... I'm forgetting because she said it was...
It's a picture, I think, of Chris Hemsworth.
It's Chris Hemsworth, that's right.
Yeah, in Ghostbusters.
Oh, his like himbo Ghostbusters.
So I was watching, is it Ghostbusters? What is the reboot called?
I think it's just called Ghostbusters.
Okay, but anyway, it's the
2015, I think.
Right, and it's inappropriate to call it the Lady Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
but so I was watching it with my niece. She was, I think, around 7 or 8 at the time. And when Chris Hemsworth came on screen and he had like glasses and a particular look, she said, "Look, it's Uncle," and I was like, that is possibly the nicest thing anyone has ever said about me.
You know what? I don't know if I can try to picture it, but I don't know if I've seen you in glasses, and I'm trying to put together...
I used to wear them all the time.
Oh, okay. Does it...
COVID... So, because I was wearing a mask, I couldn't do the mask and glasses because
it would fog
fogging.
Up. Yeah.
And so I moved to contacts, and now I'm stuck with contacts.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, I wear glasses occasionally.
Do you enjoy contacts? Because
I do.
I've talked to my dad, and he's like, well, you might have to wear some contacts, because he doesn't wear glasses throughout the day, but he does wear contacts to like do certain things or whatever, like reading contacts, I think is a thing. And he was like, you might have to do that. And I was like, Dad, I don't know if I'm going to ever be comfortable touching my eye. When stuff is in my eye, I kind of just blink until it gets out. I don't want to even approach the eye.
No, it's fine. You don't want to fall asleep with them in?
That is what terrifies me, is because I know I'm an absent-minded person at times, and I think I would, and then I would wake up and want to die. Like, it sounds so bad.
It's not good.
Yeah. It doesn't sound enjoyable as an experience.
But so, I wore glasses for a very long time, and then not. I'm sure this is fascinating.
No, it's incredible. You know what? There's been the cold open before the beginning of the show is always like, you know what? Regardless if it's entertaining, you're going to stay, listener, because you want to hear the rest of it.
Yes.
If you do, of the few of you that do. I don't know my own analytics.
This is the thing where everybody just skips to 30%.
Everyone does kind of just skip. Yeah. Even if you're on the show, you're going to be like, oh, this is the part where we talked about contacts. And here's the interesting part where I teach at Villanova. So before we do get into what the main meat of the matter of this show is, which is your comedy journey, which... Dr. Spiro. Also, this is a fun thing to address. I think in emails I've called you JP.
Yes.
Dr. Spiro.
Yes.
That's it. It's those. It's those two.
Right.
And I know you don't care.
Yeah.
Or do you care?
No, I don't care.
Yeah, I know you don't care, but I always switch up, and I think even at times it would depend on what I'm sending.
And I will do the same thing. I will sign emails Dr. Spiro if they're like formal, and if I'm just like writing, that's fine, JP.
Yeah, every email that I've seen like Trish get from you, it's like JP. Yeah. It's like that. But like when I emailed you to ask like, will you be on my podcast? I said Dr. Spiro, but I was like, I've called him. I don't think you know what? I don't know if I've ever actually addressed an email JP. but numerous times in class it was JP because that's what everyone calls you.
Yeah. Which is what it goes back to. Everybody was calling me that even before I introduced myself that way. I became. I don't know where it started. I want to say with the original chair of ACS, who was a guy named Jack Duty. He just called me JP, and he had this people just kind of followed his.
If he said a nickname,
right, he was that guy. Where if he decided that your name was like the Jake Man.
You're the Jake Man.
You're the Jake Man for the rest of your life.
Or you should leave. Like
exactly.
That's it.
You have
is this an adult nickname or did you have it when you were a kid?
I did not have it as a kid. Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
This is purely.
That's a very interesting experience. I would be so curious to see wherever I end up in my future career if I get an adult nickname because I've never really had a kid nickname. My last name is Marscola and my dad when he was in high school used to be called Scola and he was like a football legend at the high school, and so that's sort of Scola.
Right.
And then some people started calling me Scola and like variations of that.
Interesting.
But that's about it, and so it doesn't feel like mine.
Trump would call you Little Marsco.
Little Marsco. Little Marsco sounds like a island that he would absolutely love to bomb these days. Like
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
right. Or just send people to.
And
then bomb.
Yeah, then bomb. Yeah, it does. Yeah. It does feel like a little Marsco. Really, I don't like it as my nickname, but I like it as a name of a place. Super cool.
Well, we went to Little Marsco over break. It was nice.
Little Marsco. Not a big fan of Big Marsco.
No. Big Marsco's so crowded, but Little Marsco
crowded.
has this great fish bazaar.
Yeah, and there's snow cones.
There's
a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
The beginning of my sentence led to this, and what the rest of it was before we get to the meat of the matter, which is your comedy journey, which I have to say am so excited to hear. One, because I think you're interesting, but also I have talked to so many. I love my club, but I've talked to so many Ridiculum people.
Oh yeah, sure.
I'm so excited to hear.
You want to get out of the Ridiculum.
I'm a little excited to hear about what it's like to not be in Ridiculum.
Right.
So But before we get to that, something very important that we do at the beginning of every show is talking about if your personality or your interests or anything about you was distilled into a coffee table book, a book on a coffee table. What would that be? You listened to Frank's episode, and you knew Frank as a student, and his answer was like a paper about are robots human or close to human or something.
Right, it was the famous Turing paper.
The Turing paper, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that fits very well for him. A friend of mine who's really into sports, his was like a sports facts magazine, like a Scholastic catalog kind of thing.
Right.
But there's a lot of possible scenarios you could go with. It can even just be a book that you're reading right now that you enjoy. I know that you as a professor probably signed a law or like a contract saying you have to like to read. I just assume that's a professor
thing.
Not
always. No,
not
you'd
always.
Be surprised.
Really?
You'd be surprised. It's helpful, but it's not required.
Yeah, I mean, the classic answer would be for you to just be like Augustine's Confession.
Exactly, like that would be like, and I just got a raise because I said that.
Because you said that, yeah.
Because I said Augustine's. Although the Augustine's Confessions does fit to a certain.
I was gonna say if it does, tell me because I think your brain. You are a friend of mine and a comedian on this show, but you're also deep into the world of like philosophy and theology and stuff like that.
So actually, I mean, for me, it's the Divine Comedy probably. It's
really?
Dante. Yeah, because there's definitely funny parts to that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's dark parts and there's academic parts and there's like parts about him and his friends, and so it's this kind of whole universe thing. That's more me because I love comedy, and I'm definitely being a person who makes people laugh is a big part of my personality, but it's far from the only part. And I also, people who know me well know that actually I am sometimes just totally dark and not particularly funny, right? Or I'm able to blend the two sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And also I'm just, a nerdy humanities person.
It's incredibly interesting to take a 1-credit stand-up class with someone who's like a philosophy nerd and you connect it to philosophers, and we'll probably get to talking about that if you want to talk about that.
Although I don't have to.
We'll see.
When I
so interesting.
met the woman who became my wife, we were giving books to each other early on, and one of the first things I gave her was the Divine Comedy. Like, you kind of need to know this if you're gonna.
Is it long?
Get to know. Yes and no. I mean, it's poetry, so it's like you can take a long time to read it.
Oh, okay.
But in terms of word count, it's actually not massive. But it's strange and rough and at times easy to read and at times hard to read.
The Divine Comedy is I don't know if I mentioned, because I think I talk about it on like every episode, and I'm sure you are all tired of it, but my coffee table book is a book about improv comedy.
Oh yeah, Sam Lawson's Improv Nation, which is very good.
Improv Nation, the Nation.
You should read it. It's good.
And I haven't because I don't like reading.
It's good.
But I do feel that's the one book that maybe I would commit myself to reading because it's
Yeah.
about the thing that I'm addicted to at the
Yes.
moment.
Yeah.
But also the Divine Comedy, very interesting to me. I don't know why. Just it's like it's a big book and it's got the name comedy in it. And
Right.
Dante's apparently I don't know. I guess he's a good author or whatever.
He's all right.
He's all right. So I don't know. That's one that I feel like I want to dive into. And the point in my life where I start to enjoy reading again because I did
Yeah.
like it at one point. I read a lot
Yeah.
of like Percy Jackson and
Oh, yeah.
I loved Rick Riordan. I read the
Yeah.
39 Clues.
Yeah.
I was big into that.
And part of what's great about it is he's trying to take like literally everything he's ever experienced and everything he's ever known and make it all fit together.
Mm-hmm.
That's very me. Like
Yeah.
I try to make it all fit together.
Yeah.
And it is a comedy. This is another thing. Like, so my own research, I do Shakespeare and I write about Shakespeare's comedies, but actually I don't write about the humor very much.
Huh.
Part of it because it's like the humor doesn't necessarily translate to our moment.
Yeah.
But I'm more interested in it in the structure of it, like what makes this a comedy as opposed to another kind of thing.
I've always been curious about that too, because it's like, and you know, like a Shakespearean comedy, and then I would read it as like a middle schooler and be like, this
Right.
nothing about this was funny.
Right.
They
right,
like,
right.
No, I was like, where was the comedy?
Right.
But it means something else back then.
Right, right. And it has funny parts, and if it's performed well, there will be things that you
Yeah, I
find
think
funny.
a performer
But it's
can
much
for
more
sure.
about the fact that, no, it ends happily. It ends with relationship being formed, and it's with the community kind of getting along with each other. And the same with there's a reason why sitcoms are sitcoms.
Mhm.
Like, it's just it's a family, or it's a workplace, or it's a bunch of people. They form relationships with each other. They have their kind of ups and downs, hijinks, but nothing terrible really ever happens.
Comedy sort of means it wasn't a tragedy.
Yes.
in a way.
Right,
Okay.
right. And it's part of this is not actually the case with Dante, but it's the case with a lot of things. Like, as I just said, nothing truly awful is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're watching something that's funny and then all of a sudden halfway through, like, a bunch of the characters die, you are not watching a comedy. They kind of tricked you.
Yeah.
Right. It might have comic elements, but it is not a comedy as such.
Very
And
interesting.
usually if you're watching a comedy and there's a guy and there's a girl and they're flirting with each other, they're going to be together at the end. Or if they're fighting with each other, they're going to be together at the end. Like, this is really...
If it's a tragedy, they're probably gonna
then
end
probably
in some...
someone will die.
Huh.
Right.
Yeah, someone will
someone-
have cancer.
Someone will be ruined.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So Dante's the Divine Comedy.
Right. Which is, it's the only he called it the comedy. He didn't even put divine in it. But he just, because it ends happily. It ends with, like, he goes to heaven.
Oh, cool.
That's all it means, is it ends happily.
That's
it's
hilarious.
not the tragedy because he goes to hell, but then he gets out of hell and
Mm-hmm.
he goes to better places. Like, it's just that it leads to a kind of to union,
Mm-hmm.
to, like, he is together with God effectively. But it doesn't have to end that way. But the same way that, like, Jane Austen's novels, again, not necessarily laugh out loud funny, but they almost always end with, and they got married,
Yeah.
right? And the community was unified. Right.
That sounds like simpler times when there were really only two genres. It sounded like
Right.
It was really
Very
like
few
something
others.
bad
Yeah.
happens or something good happens.
Right.
And anything can happen in between.
Right. So, like, it was inevitable with, like, Friends.
Mhm.
They were going to start hooking up with each other.
Yeah.
Like, that's built into the structure of
Had
the
to
show.
happen. Yeah.
Right. And this is an important distinction, actually, I think. I might have talked about this in the class. That makes it different from satire.
Yes. I
Because
remember
satire
this.
is about how people... It's much more about, like, what's bad about people, and there's something funny about it, but really it's about people who, like, the joke about Seinfeld was no hugging, no learning.
Mhm.
Like, these people will never get any better, and they will never
Yeah.
form functioning human relationships.
Yeah.
And it annoyed people, but Seinfeld had to end with them all going on trial because it was ultimately about how they were bad people.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was a satirical show. It wasn't actually comedy in the traditional sense.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was Jerry being like a bit of an elevated version of himself, or
Right.
or his life. I
Right.
mean, the
Right.
reason, and also that's probably why. I mean, I would assume why, like, he stuck himself as a comedian into that story as a character.
Right.
It's easiest to build a satire around something you're pretty familiar with.
Right. And let's just make fun of every element of our lives that we can. Let's
Yeah.
just think about any situation where almost always the joke is how badly behaved somebody's going to be, or sort of how kind of petty they're going to be. And it was not totally realistic in that, in real life, Jerry and Larry David, like, they have functioning relationships.
Yeah.
Like, they're able to kind of grow up in a sense, whereas Seinfeld was about a bunch of people who ultimately were never going to grow up.
That's very interesting too, because I mean, that's pretty surface level, and people really laugh. And it's a weird thing of like everyone knows that Seinfeld is a bit of a satire or a bit of a, but no one's really like, oh, what a horrible person, or is like making theories on that.
No.
Opposite though, people talk about Ross from Friends as though he's a psychopath.
They do,
because he might be.
Because
he might actually be. But it's crazy because the show didn't try to lead you there. Whatever a show doesn't want you to do, you will absolutely analyze it the other way.
And here's the reason why that is.
Why?
Friends, when it was being created, basically the idea was, let's do Seinfeld but with better looking people. There were even executives who were like, Seinfeld's a good show, but we all see what the problem is. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? Like, the problem with the show is that these people are not young and cute enough.
That's hilarious.
And so let's do a better one. And because they thought, because Seinfeld, its first season was not doing great. And they're like, that show's going to fail.
It wasn't meant to succeed.
But they found David Schwimmer, who they thought of as just sort of a younger, better looking Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah. And then they built the show around him.
Which is crazy. Because I don't like him.
Exactly. He's the weak link.
He's the weak link,
but actually, Jerry is the weak link on Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, I think especially, and I think it's something, I don't know, I don't want to psychoanalyze Jerry Seinfeld, but I would venture to guess that he was directly involved with the writing of it.
Yeah, he's creating the show.
And so he was like, I don't need to be the main character. Let's really poke at the other characters because everyone knows who I am.
And the show is about the way he reacts to things. So let's just have everybody be funny and I react.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And so Friends sort of operated in a kind of similar way. I remember, I think it might be Jeff Ross. There was a roast and Jason Alexander was there and I think it was Jeff Ross. He said, the other cast members from Seinfeld can't be here because their backs hurt from carrying Jerry every week.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I think about that joke all the
time.
I occasionally want to say that if I have like an ACS class where one student talks all the time and everybody else is quiet, and then like the day that student is absent, I just want to be like, yeah, she's in a room recovering from having to carry all of you every week. Like I never say that, but
that's the vibe.
I'm always thinking funny things I can't say
because there's those few people. I mean, also they're all first years, and no one wants to talk. I didn't want to talk.
No one's comfortable.
I didn't talk, and I wasn't in your class for context, but I've had many people that were in your class, and just talking about the experience of the ACS class, it seemed like it was less intimidating, a little more fun to talk in your class.
Yeah, I try to create an easygoing.
It was not anything against my professor. I just none of us really clicked. Like, which is
sometimes
crazy.
It's the chemistry in the room and it has nothing to do with the teacher.
Which is crazy because a lot of us, actually all of us, were in the same communitas together. But it was only the few friends that I picked up and then left that from. JP, I could talk about. I could get lectured by you for the entire show. I would love to. I do really need to hear. Also, because this is stuff that I've heard before, not entirely repeat, but stuff that I really haven't dug into yet. Is I want to know about your comedy journey. Now, I know like 2 years of it.
Right.
And I would still consider that your comedy journey. And one thing you said at the beginning of the show that a lot of people have is like, am I a comedian? And I think, first of all, of a lot of people that I've talked to, I think maybe you have more of a right to because you have done comedy and gotten paid.
I did once or twice.
You did once or twice, and that is more than nonce.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I know very little about it, which is a very interesting experience for me because most of the time it's been me observing someone that I've done comedy with for the past 4 years. So wherever it starts, and don't feel like you need to rush it. I will railroad you to make sure that we get it by the end of the episode. But wherever you feel, but you're also a professor. You're pretty good at keeping time, I'd say. So
I have an internal clock.
Yeah, you have an internal clock for sure.
I know when 50 minutes is up.
Absolutely, yeah. So wherever it starts for you, it doesn't have to be at college. I would guess it's not necessarily starting at college. Or even before that, like wherever you think your interest in comedy, your experience, your relationship with comedy starts, take me through it. I'll chime in every once in a while, but tell me.
Interest in comedy is, I mean, I would almost from as far back as I can remember.
Go for it then.
Like really, very early memories of the TV shows I liked watching were comedy shows. I like so I was reflecting on this, and like Jacob's going to ask about my comedy journey, and I was like, so the running theme for the first part of my life is parental neglect. So my parents, and I was of this generation, I don't think it's true for people your age, we just watched incredibly unhealthy amounts of television. Like we did not have smartphones, and so people my age will be like, oh, kids today with their smartphones. We watched so much television. television.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I remember it was either that or, and you say parental neglect, and it makes me think of like, well, my dad didn't watch too much television, but would literally be like gone from the house
Yeah,
and like out there,
right.
like no one was watching them.
No one is watching it.
And
Yeah.
I think it's what John Mulaney said in some special, where it's like no one was watching us, or maybe it wasn't
Yes.
John Mulaney. I can't remember who. It was like we would just leave, and I don't know, like
Yeah.
no one was paying
You
attention
could go
to us.
out and come so long as you were back for dinner. They did not pay attention to where you were,
That's
or
literally
who
it.
you were with.
Yeah,
Or they would just let me sit in front of the TV
yeah.
for days on end, basically.
Well, also it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was, not new, but it was newer than what TV is for me.
Yeah.
Like, so it was
Yeah.
like, maybe, especially the studies of like, you shouldn't let your child sit in front of the TV,
Right.
or like, oh, it'll ruin your child's brain. Like, probably wasn't in the forefront of your parents' minds? Or not as
people were
much.
talking about
People
it,
were talking about it?
But, parents back then had other interests than their children.
Mm-hmm.
They just had their own stuff to do, and often they had to work long hours and so on. But also, there was not what we now call attachment parenting. Like the whole thing was like, no,
They
part of
got
how
it.
kids develop independence is you literally treat them as if they're independent.
Look where you are now.
Exactly.
On a podcast, on the most prestigious comedy podcast.
I'm a very independent person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I watched lots of television, and so we had cable, and HBO had comedy specials, and so I would watch stand up. I started watching SNL, Saturday Night Live, when I want to say 6 years old.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think I was exposed to it until I was like 12 or
Right.
something.
And so I remember very distinctly. So a funny thing is, like, people my parents' age will talk about, they remember when Kennedy was assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
So I was watching when Buckwheat was assassinated on Saturday Night Live. That was like the first season that I was watching. This was an Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
This is, I want to say, 1980 or 81.
Yeah.
And Eddie Murphy played Buckwheat. And they did a whole episode. Saturday Night Live doesn't usually do this, but they were kind of experimenting that year. They did a whole episode where that was the episode Buckwheat got shot, and the whole rest of the episode was an imitation of the Kennedy assassination sort of news cycle. And I was just sort of amazed by it, first of all, because I couldn't believe it was happening, like that they're doing this.
That's kind of bold.
And
honestly.
and I was watching it with my father, and he just kept saying, "This is exactly what the Kennedy assassination was like." So I do not even know it's being satirized exactly, but I appreciate that is what they're doing, and so already by that age, I love laughing. I love things that are funny. I love anything that presents itself as funny. So I read Mad Magazine. I watched all the sitcoms. I watched all the stand-up shows. I watched Saturday Night Live. I just took it all in. Like this was the thing that I liked the most.
Early on, what was like the first? And I guess SNL, you're getting exposed to a lot of big names in comedy.
Right.
What was like, whether it's stand-up? Like, what was the first name that you remember yourself like latching on to?
So definitely
specifically?
Carlin.
Carlin,
Absolutely Carlin.
Yeah,
Who anybody who
makes
takes
sense.
stand-up with me knows that I tend to
Yeah,
emphasize
for sure.
him. In fact, I was just looking up the Wikipedia entry on stand-up comedy. The top picture is a picture of George Carlin.
Of course it is. It's
right,
yeah.
because
it's him.
He's not just on Mount Rushmore. He is the mountain of Mount Rushmore, and the others are carved on it.
If someone told me he was like a stand-up comedian, time traveler, and actually is from when stand-up comedy started, and he created it, I'd believe him.
And he didn't, but he did it for so long, and he's just one of its greatest practitioners. And so he had these great HBO specials in the early 80s that I watched over and over again, and I would basically memorize. And so this was another thing. I was the youngest in my family, and when I did comedy later, I learned a lot of people in comedy were the youngest in their family.
Yeah.
And because you learn to use comedy to manage people. Like, you're not going to physically intimidate people because you're used to people being older than you are. You're therefore also not going to be the most athletic person in your family. Even if you are, there's people who are just bigger than you and whatever. But so you form a personality that helps you to manage that. And for many of us, what we would do is we would just learn to be funny. And I just learned it from watching it. And so I would come into school, and other kids, their parents did not let them watch late night television. But I had all of these jokes, right? I had these like, or I would say, oh, that's like when Bill Cosby says such and such, or that's like when Rita Rudner says such and such, and other people were not familiar with all this stuff. They would just be
like, I don't know what you're talking about.
They were like, you don't go to bed at 9 p.m.? I'm like, I don't really go to bed.
I don't really sleep.
I like the wee hours of the night because I get to be alone and just watch my TV.
This sounds like the origin story for a comedian. This absolutely doesn't sleep, like watches TV, that consumes comedy only. Everyone else is like, what are you talking about? Like confused as to what you are.
Right. And so quite isolated in that sense. People would laugh at me, but laugh at me. You know, it wasn't a great way of making friends.
I'm curious, just because I've sort of, or at least even early on, but it's more of a thing that some people say is early on, but I've sort of developed it now. People would laugh at you. Would that be laughter, and you're like, well, it's laughter, or would you
Both.
A little both? Processing
both.
is like,
So some
I
of it is-
understand.
So people are going to laugh at you no matter what you do if you're me, right? But you can control it.
Yeah.
And consciously making someone laugh, which is an amazing thing. This sounds horrible, but I think it's good to think about. You are causing an involuntary reaction in someone.
Yeah, you're
Like when
sort of
make
controlling
someone,
them.
especially if you make someone laugh at something they don't want to laugh at, but they laugh anyway. Like this is a certain kind of a victory or power.
Yeah, there's definitely been like, and I have this experience like being in Ridiculum and being in like the stand-up practices.
Right.
Someone will say a joke that like me and Kevin know we probably shouldn't put that on stage, but we'll laugh at it, and I can feel myself like, oh no, don't laugh at it because they'll like, and yeah, absolutely, I understand what you mean, but that's a fun way of thinking about it. You cause someone to do, you control their body in a way.
Yeah, and it still fascinates me what people laugh at and what they don't. So like I'm constantly trying to make my family laugh, and sometimes they will all laugh at something that I thought, oh, they're going to totally groan when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, and they will all laugh hysterically. And then sometimes the opposite happens. I think I've just said the wittiest thing, and everybody's like, really?
There's no way to predict it.
Yeah, and I emphasize this when I teach the class. If students bring in their material, like it's not very funny. I'm like, you don't know if it's funny. We are terrible judges of our own stuff.
Yeah,
The only way to know is if people laugh. And the thing is, it might be that no one in the room laughs, but it's still funny because there are people somewhere who would laugh at that.
It's amazed me. So for context, I've taken your class twice now.
Right.
I took it for real, and then I just audited it this year because I wanted to take it again. It was so fun.
You were like the teaching assistant.
I was excited.
Yeah,
I was excited to be in the room
helpful.
and just occasionally be like, and also this, but also it was super fun because Noel took the class, and Noel might as well also be a TA.
Oh, sure.
Like he had taken that class for the same time, but he's far better than me. I would argue at stand-up comedy.
There was not much I needed to teach Noel.
It was very Noel was just there honestly to work on his material and get ready for his live show,
which is great. Yeah.
But it was such a fun experience and because I remember this even from the first time I took the class, but like, see, especially with more people in this class this year, more than last year.
Right. That's another thing about that class. Sometimes 4 people take it, and sometimes next year 18 people I've registered for this class.
I wonder how many people stay.
Right. We'll see if we can thin it out.
Who knows?
But so yeah, some years nobody's heard about it or nobody wants to take it, and then some years it's huge.
But it's super interesting because, like you said, some people will be like, I don't know if this is funny, and then at the final performance, I'm like, why aren't you in my club?
Yeah.
And why am I in my club? Like, that's how I feel with some of the performances I saw this year. That's how I felt with some of the performances last year. And then we did nab Noah, and now Noah's in stand-up with us, which is super great. Which is great. And that's what was honestly, it felt like a business trip taking your class the first time. I was like, I'm gonna find some people for my stand-up branch.
Yeah.
And that's how it felt this year as well. I just didn't really get anyone, or no one bit, but Noah took it. But it's super fun to see people like, I don't know if this is going to be funny or not. And then it's like, that felt like an insult to me because you just did something better than what I've done before. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's super interesting.
Yeah. And some people just have a natural feel for it.
Yeah, they do. And they don't realize they do. And whether that's even because they're naturally funny or they're just a natural performer.
Right.
The amount of performers I've seen, which is, I think, more common to come by in just random students who take like a 1-credit colloquium than it is like naturally funny. Not to say that not a lot of people are naturally funny, but if you're a natural performer, that's honestly one of the harder parts, I'd say.
Yes.
Because you got to figure out, because if you're naturally funny, but you go up there and you try to like have a funny, witty conversation with your friends on stage, that's not what you want. No. But if you're a performer, that's like one of the hardest things I feel like to build out in that class. Once you have that, you just have to believe that the things you say are going to cause laughter.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it came to performing, it was in my teens, sort of 2 things happened. One was I started doing the Rocky Horror Picture Show in my teens.
Fun. I've never watched that like live.
Yeah.
I want to so bad. I want to go to a theater and experience that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's still the same way it used to be, but this was still when it was a very thriving kind of subculture, right? The Rocky Horror Picture Show, which if you're not familiar, they show the movie at midnight on Fridays and Saturdays, and there's a group of people who've seen it hundreds of times.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they will literally act out the movie as it's happening, and I've been part of that. And sometimes, or always, there's people in the audience who interact with the movie. They like yell things at it, or they like do jokes with it, or they make fun of what's
It's
happening.
the only movie that I can. There's like maybe a few others I haven't seen, but it's the
Right.
only movie where I've heard it's like the rule: don't talk in the movie.
You
doesn't
have to talk.
You have to talk. It's
Right.
actually a failure if you try to let them do their thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's actually not a very good movie to just simply watch.
It's so I watched it for the first time. I think my first year of. No, maybe my sophomore year of college, and I watched it with my friends, and like I enjoyed it, but there were moments where like I knew this was a live performance thing that people
Right.
like, and we sat in the silence of certain parts, and I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
it's a little strange.
It really drags towards the end.
It does, yeah.
It's a badly paced movie, and so this is where like you need all these extra people to sort of entertain.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing about that was the movie is very, when it came out, it was very transgressive. It was very like about queer life, and mid-70s this was still incredibly controversial, and still when I started going, it was very much, there were people who were part of Rocky Horror because they were queer, or because they were just different, and did not fit anywhere else, and like you found your people by going to Rocky Horror.
Yeah,
right,
definitely.
and so I started going, and again, I had the parents that I had, oh, you want to go see a movie that starts at midnight on a Friday and Saturday, you will go to both shows. And I did this for years, and they were like, sure, fine, your friends,
go do that.
your friends can just drop you off
This
when you
sounds
get
like
home.
this sounds like such a fun era to live in as a child.
I mean,
you can. I don't want to.
I'm not. Yeah,
I don't
this
want
is
to
good.
assume. Yeah,
This is good.
This
I
is
mean,
good.
I'm glad I had. So I'm not speaking ill of my parents in this way, but they were really, they also just, they trusted me. They're like, okay, you'll get home at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's crazy the dynamic. We're talking about comedy, but let's get serious for like a minute. It's crazy the dynamic. I didn't like if I was God and I made humanity, I wouldn't have guessed like, oh, they're gonna go through eras of parental like child relation. I would assume it would just all be the same.
No.
But that's also because I'm God and I didn't predict that they would change in culture and stuff like that.
Right,
So
right.
that would be, but it's super interesting that we like the genre of parent and like
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's crazy that it shifted.
Right. Well, in a sense, there's cultures where, oh yeah, you're 14, 15, you're an adult.
Pretty much,
Your parents
yeah.
aren't keeping tabs on you at all.
Drink, do what you want, whatever.
It's your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, back to the funny part of our show.
So a great thing about Rocky Horror is that it basically has a script. Like
Yeah.
you go there and you realize like, oh, they've all memorized this thing, and it's actually kind of, there's jokes that people do everywhere. So you can go to Rocky Horror in other towns and they're doing many of the same things that you're doing, but then there's also local variations, which is fascinating because this is the other great thing. If you made something up and everybody liked it, then the next week everybody's doing it, and you can kind of contribute to the script. Which there were a couple of things that I made up that are like still there.
That's
like,
very fun. I didn't know
20
that.
years later, I found out they're still saying that, and they don't know that I'm the person who made it up.
That's incredibly fun. That
Yeah.
sounds like a very like the way the in like an improv scene, the tragedy of every time we do it is that we've done it, no one will ever see that again.
Right,
And
it's
the only
ephemeral, it's
thing
gone
the only
away.
thing that might be referenced is us as friends when we talk about that
Right.
scene. That sounds
Right.
very fun that if you improvise or make up something, then it's just in the show if it's good enough.
Right. Other people remember and they do it after you. Right?
Very cool.
And so it was just basically to perform every week, like to a new audience. So there's and then these people who've never seen the movie before, and they're coming basically to watch you. And so that got me into, and I didn't even think about it as performance, but it really was performance. And it was also a great way of honing your timing, because you've got this movie playing. You have to say the joke at exactly the right time so that there is a beat, and then the person on the screen says the thing you want them to say. And so you learn your timing really carefully.
Very, very multimedia performance. Very
Yeah.
like Bo Burnham when he
Right.
did live shows.
Right.
Very much like you got to hit your cue.
Yes.
More so in a way that I feel it's like what theater does basically, but it's like you're playing with something that's already made, and they didn't make that thinking they're not waiting for you, and like you have to kind of balance that.
Yeah.
That's very fun.
Yeah. And so I did that. And then the other thing was I met Kevin Marr, who you know because I always bring him to teach the stand-up class.
He's awesome.
He's an amazing guy.
I've loved getting to hear from him twice.
We went to high school together, and we became friends. And then this was like, oh, this is the other person like this. Like
I found another comedian
where all they do is they just love comedy. And he was way deeper than I was. And he just was, brilliant comedically, and he just cranks up. So he was also by then writing his own comic stuff. And I wasn't. I was just, I'll be funny around my friends, but he was literally writing little funny comic pieces that he would share with me. And then we started writing together. And so we wrote a whole parody of our high school newspaper that we only showed to our teachers.
Huh.
And the teachers just loved loved it. So they're like, oh my God, you made fun of that other student exactly perfectly.
So you say that, did you explain to me, did you write a sketch about the newspaper staff, or did you made a newspaper?
We made a newspaper.
Oh, very fun.
We basically made like an onion.
Yeah.
For our high school newspaper.
There's some, I think Owen, who is my roommate, my friend, and he now basically used to at this point because we're close to done. But he used to write for the Villanova. But he was like, I wish we had ever done this, but some campuses will do like on April Fools, like a parody of themselves.
Yes.
And he was like, I always wanted us to do this, or I thought it would be cool. We just never did. But it sounds very interesting.
It was super fun. It was super fun to do, and we also wrote a fake high school poetry anthology.
Oh my God!
Which we would then also perform like as a poetry reading. And very important, this was mostly for our teachers. This was not for our classmates. Because this was another thing I really liked about comedy from the get-go, which is it's basically for adults.
Yeah.
Like, children like it. But there's a reason why comedy clubs are 18 and up. And it's not just because of, like, alcohol is involved. It's like, this is an adult activity. And there's certain jokes that children will never understand. And there's just something about the way that I'm going to point certain things out that you need to have a little experience in life in order to understand what I'm saying. And also there's a level of honesty where we're not just concealing our thoughts because we're around children right now. We're actually speaking some maybe difficult truths here, or we're just pointing out things that are strange or absurd about our own culture. And making adults laugh was so much more interesting to me than making children laugh.
It's very interesting to me. Your first willing and receptive audience was adults.
Yes.
Which is a difficult audience as a child to get the approval of.
Yes.
Because I mean, even I was gonna say even though like I'm an adult, I'm not, but I'm an adult. Our last improv show, our club's advisor, Kevin Esmond, came to the show. And, I've interacted with Kevin before, and he's great. And I've even, he was in the improv class that I took last semester. But, that particular, an adult coming to our shows, most of the time it's fellow college students and, the occasional parent, which is a fun, time where we're ooh, what is the parent going to think? Right. But that, adult that I'm aware of and that kind of authority being in the audience, I was like, I wonder how he's going to take it. And he loved it. Yeah. But it's such a weird experience being this age, this era of child still, and having to perform to adults.
And college comedy is its own genre.
Yeah,
because again, it's not aimed at 12-year-olds aren't going to find it funny, but also adults will laugh probably at a lot of it. As in, you are adults, but people in their 30s or 40s, they'll laugh at some of it, and some will be like, okay, that's you're being kind of adolescent. Right
you
now.
Kids, yeah, right, which is such a. I feel like there's been, but I've even interacted with some fellow college improvisers when I've gone out and met them at Georgetown. We go out and meet these other troops when we go out and do their improv fest. Some college improvisers I think are in a rush to get to that adult comedy because sometimes we'll say something or I can see the reaction at a party. And it's I can see in their brain that they're you fellow kids. And I'm you just told me you're a sophomore and I'm about to graduate. Right. What are you talking about? Some comedians, I think, in the same way that just kids are in a rush to grow up. And to be fair, it's what you've just said. There's a reason, because that area of adult comedy, that's we've reached the final threshold. Not anything, but this is comedies for adults, and I'm in the audience where now comedy can thrive the most, in my opinion. I think that's why I think some college comedians are trying to grow up really fast, and also because if you are a Kevin Keane or a Noel B. Doherty, who are trying to advance their comedy careers, getting there and growing up, you've made it, or at least you're in the area where you're gonna make it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And. Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
I don't remember where we were either.
That's fine. But so those two things were high school, and then in college I joined a sketch group. There was an already existing sketch comedy troupe, and I...
Where is this? What college?
This was at Vassar College.
Vassar College,
in
gotcha.
New York State, and it was just good luck. I auditioned my first week of college, and I got in as a freshman, which I learned did not always happen. And one of the main reasons I got in was at the audition I told them I'm a writer, I'm a comedy writer. I can perform, but I'm really more of a writer, and that is always a plus in a sketch group because there's people who are the opposite. There's people who they're good actors, but they're not necessarily going to write a sketch. But you always need people to write sketches, And so I got in, and it was a very good group to be in. We've had some people go on from the group to successful careers, and it was also just a good way. It immediately gave me a kind of role in my college campus. Like, I'm part of this group, and this is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And it aligned me with the sort of rest of the kind of comedy performance community on campus. So there was also an improv troupe, and we did shows with them sometimes, where we would write sketches. It's like, oh, because we're both performing together, now I can write a sketch that has 20 people in it, because we have two troupes performing together.
Absolutely.
And then also we would play improv games with them and stuff like that. And we also, when comedians came to campus, we would open up for them, which was really fun. So,
oh, that's fun.
Dennis Leary and Chris Rock and Jake Johansson all performed at my college, and we opened for them, and then we got to hang out with them after the show, and we got to talk to them about comedy.
That's insane. Was your college known for that, or was the time that you were going to college, was that more likely to happen at a university?
Both of those things.
That's awesome. That's super cool that you get to do that. I feel like that's something that Ridiculum would dream of, just to have any comedian that is more than us come perform.
And they would, it's generally my experience with professional comedians. They will sit down and talk to you. They will give you advice.
Cool.
They will tell stories. They will give you pointers. It's a teaching community, and so that was really great. That was really fun. But I also was making the decision when I was in college, because I wasn't thinking too far ahead. And somewhere in there, I was like, I'm either going to become a comedian or a professor, and professor suits my skill set better.
Mm-hmm.
What
about your skill set? I'm curious as to that thought process.
The shorthand I have for this is, I can be smart any day of the week. I'm not funny every day of the week.
Funny takes a little more.
It's just sometimes I'm very funny.
Sometimes
I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And also the life that goes with the different professions.
Yeah.
Professor made more sense to me, because being a moderately successful comedian is actually not necessarily a life I wanted to live. You're doing all this traveling you don't necessarily want to do. You're kind of always desperately trying to find jobs.
And you're also not making crazy bank. You're making enough to live. You're traveling just to do, really, I think that specific area that you've talked, the moderately successful comedian, if they're still doing it, it's because they love it, and that is maybe the only thing keeping them going.
Right. And sometimes you're teaching people who become more successful than you, and you watch them overleap you. I've seen that, and I've heard that story many times. This was actually, I never thought about it exactly this way, but this might have been the moment. So Jon Stewart performed on my campus when he was just a comedian at the time.
This is crazy.
This is before The Daily Show.
The amount of names that you're dropping is it sounds awesome.
He had at the time the Jon Stewart Show on MTV, which was a sort of it was a sketch-ish show.
It was a little different, yeah.
And he was there, and he had brought one of his writers with him, and I'm talking to her because she's a professional comedy writer, and she's like, well, I'm really glad that I just signed a new contract because the show's doing well. And then I said, oh, that's great that, you can be comfortable for a while. And she said, it's a 3-week contract.
Oh, man.
Yeah, MTV only does 3-week.
A 3-week contract?
Yes. Because they would just cancel things, or they would just randomly move things, or they would just decide we need all new writers, and that this was always happening.
That's crazy.
Right. And I was like, and you're successful. You're like a professional comedy writer, but this is what you're living. This is how you live.
Yeah.
And if you've ever listened to the Dana Carvey, David Spade podcast,
I haven't.
Spade will talk about a lot how he just went kind of year to year on Saturday Night Live.
Mm-hmm.
And that Lorne Michaels would always kind of toy with him, and he'd be like, so I'll see you in the fall, and Lorne would say, I don't know, will you? But this meant he would have to move, because you can't live in New York City without a job, or without knowing that you're going to have a job.
Yeah, that hiatus between...
He had to keep moving back and forth, just waiting to be told whether or not he had a job.
That sucks.
And this is a thing that you learn when you get involved in the professional comedy universe. A lot of these people are independently wealthy, because it really helps.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
And that's not good, because then the only people who are becoming successful comedians are people whose parents can pay their rent.
Which doesn't necessarily craft a tough upbringing, which creates comedy.
Exactly. Right. And so all the jokes tend to be like, have you ever noticed when you're looking at your stock portfolio and you're at your dad's beach house, there's a lot of that. And so I was just like, and that's if you're moderately successful. Like, I don't even know if I'll be moderately successful. Maybe I'll just be somebody who's not very good.
It is a fraction of a percentage of the chance that I might be Chris Rock. Like
a tiniest
percent. I think even he's worried that it might go away. Like that. Yeah, that's something that I think all comedians probably live in fear of. Even if you are, there might be like 1 or 2 comedians where it's like, well, I know that I'm blank.
Right.
I'm probably okay. But that's it.
And one of the things people will say is, if you can do something else, do something else.
Man.
And so a lot of your successful comedians are people like, they can't do anything else. This is the only thing they're actually really good at. Whereas I was like, I can be a professor. And I did. Like, it was, and it's quite natural to me. Like, this is where I get to use my performance background all the time. A lot of my classes I basically structure like improvs. It's just a more reliable part of my skill set.
I mean, I think it's good that you find that out, and I think what's especially exciting, because I think oftentimes when that story is told, it's like, oh man, you gave up on your dream.
People will say that, but no.
I also don't get that vibe from you every time that you talk about stand-up comedy, or every time you like, where you're like, oh yeah, I'm living the worst life that I could because I'm not a comedian. Like,
right.
But like, you're a comedian still. You will every time you teach comedians every fall. Like, that is more than other comedians do. I think there's some comedians that could never teach comedy because, I mean, they have to be so focused on their own comedy.
Right.
How could you even begin to like manage like 16 different personas and make sure that they are doing what they need to do?
Right. And this is another thing that's more, I guess, my personality is I'm more happy about other people's success than my own.
That's awesome.
And teaching is like, that's a good thing for being a teacher.
That is a great, I
really want my students to do well. Like, I really like helping people go on a kind of intellectual journey, right? That's more interesting to me than I said a smart thing that everybody thought was smart, or I said a funny thing that everybody thought was funny. Like, I like doing those things.
Yeah.
But it's more, like, what you were just saying is another version of, it's very hard to get far in comedy unless you're singularly focused on your own career.
Yeah, and that's not even like that's selfish, but not like a negative selfish.
No,
you have to do that to survive.
You have to be, right? Yeah. You have to just be thinking all the time, like, what's the next thing? How do I get it? How do I get the job that the other person didn't get? Right? These sorts of things that I do not like thinking that way.
I have a curious question, because you're talking about this like landscape that you were exposed to or were told about when you were in college. Given what stuff in general that's changed now that we're here in 2025,
right.
And like you've got so many different more genres of comedians that like or how they thrive or everything. Do you think that still exists? Do you think there's more accessibility to you don't have to be as selfish anymore now, or like there's less of a barrier to entry? Do you think we've created more of a barrier to entry? I'm curious, even if you just have a like I'm not so sure, but this is my thoughts take on it, because I think the internet and interconnectivity has definitely created a platform for a comedian to be, I can put all my stuff out there and they know who I am. But that means that every other comedian can also do that. So it's like a take 1 step forward, 2 steps back kind of thing. Do you think any of that accessibility has changed? Is it better? Is it worse now? In your opinion, from the perspective you're sitting in?
That's a great question. I don't know that it's better or worse. It's definitely changed.
Yeah.
And so, like almost any industry, there's these gatekeepers. And when I was young, like the goal was, if you were a stand-up, you have to get on the Johnny Carson show, and if you are a sketch person or a comedy actor, you want to get on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
like, that was it.
Those are the two places.
So Johnny Carson himself and Lorne Michaels himself were these gatekeepers, and there were very few other ways in, right? And now that there's the internet, right, there's people who they've basically got onto. They got onto big things because they just put their stuff online and somehow people saw it.
Yeah.
Now, part of this is also YouTube and others function as their own kinds of gatekeepers. And I don't know how it works, but I know some people get elevated and some people
It
don't.
is very hard to make it big there. And even though there is this wide-reaching thing, like I said, everyone else also has access to this, meaning you're back at square one for the most part.
Right. And how you get an audience to find you is, I think, a very tricky, hard situation. And one of the bad things I've seen is one of the best ways of getting noticed on the internet is picking a fight with a celebrity. Just saying something mean about a celebrity, and then like you get linked because can you believe that she said this thing, and then you get attention. But that's another one of those like bad incentives. Like then the wrong people are getting all the attention.
Yeah, and even if it isn't the wrong people, you've now sprung your career out of negativity or hate or any kind of contention, which like there's no like that there should be no negative stuff or even any kind of cynical stuff in comedy. Some of the best stuff comes from that. But I do really enjoy when I see like a nice happy comedian.
Yes.
Like a nice, like the jokes are goofy and silly and not like fuck the president, like
right.
Which like but it's nice and kind of refreshing when I see one like that.
And there are, I think, periods of openness, and then they'll go back to being gatekeepers. So like right now, a bad thing about the environment is like Joe Rogan is now a gatekeeper. Like if you're Joe Rogan's friend, you will get on his show, and then you will get an audience.
You'll get big,
right?
yeah.
And maybe you're funny, or maybe he just likes you, right?
Yeah.
But he functions this way, and the networks are still very gated in this particular way. And so, a lot of it, I know it's very, very funny people who, they've had decent careers, but not fantastic careers. But part of it is they just never got through certain doors, or never were the person of the moment, right? And again, this is all my way of saying I do not have regrets about the course of my life, because then another part of my journey is, I did a little comedy after college. I stand up here and there, showcases, open mics kind of thing, but I was very concerned with graduate school, and I had like 12 jobs because I was broke. And it came out while I was here at Villanova that I had done comedy when I was younger, and so then that led to
someone heard.
Right. The chair of the honors program, it was Tom Smith at the time, he just asked me if I would do the colloquium, and so I've been doing the colloquium for maybe 7 years or so.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, sure, we'll see how this goes. And then Frank was in that first class.
He was in the first one you did?
First one that I did.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And a number of really, really funny people were in that class, and it was successful. And
That's
so once
awesome.
it was successful, honors was like, okay, you can do this every year now.
I love that it exists. I love what especially is really fun now that I've got to experience both. I love that exists. I get that there's more of a reason and an area for like the improv class that I've taken to exist, because that exists in theater. It's connected more to something that Villanova is more structured and like grounded in.
Right.
But I love that they both exist, because I think, and what we've already kind of talked about already, it reveals some like very unlikely comedians that literally only exist because either you or Chelsea Phillips or someone on campus was like, hey, try this for a second and don't think about if it's funny or not.
Right.
And then it gets some sort of a reaction. And if you're truly a comedian, that little like your synapses will be firing, and you're like, oh my god, the response was awesome. I need that again. Or I want to get that again. Or I want to write and like get that. Like it's not even like a negative thing, but like the validation, you're like, oh, I gotta get that again, because it feels so good. Because comedy is not like it's not like the way that, I mean, not that everyone can publicly speak, but like public speaking or getting like an applause, like a commencement speech, I'd say is maybe a little more accessible, or you could at least learn to write a speech and like get there or whatever. You might not be the best speaker. Comedy feels like maybe this weird cousin of public speaking that not everyone can maybe touch at all times.
Yeah. I think of public speaking as just comedy without jokes.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, there was this thing called spoken word, where there were these people you go, oh, like, yeah, he does spoken word, and I'm like,
that's what
you mean. There's just no jokes, so we're just like listening to someone tell stories or like share their observations, except they're not funny. Why would we do this?
Why would we do that?
I don't understand.
Have you grown an appreciation for it now? Not really. Interesting.
No.
So spoken. I'm curious because you had mentioned too. Yeah, this is an interview. This is a comedy interview podcast, but I'm about to ask you about poetry.
Please.
What do you think in your? Because I assume poetry works for you.
Oh yeah, I love
yeah.
poetry.
So like, again, spoken word poetry, essentially in the same realm of like, what do you like about one or the other? What do you, or what necessarily is like? Oh well, I get this a little more, because I'm just very curious about that aspect. When you mentioned it like way back at the beginning of the show, I was like, oh, poetry. I didn't know this was like a part of him.
Poetry, almost always you're doing something interesting with language that's getting me to think about language in a way I haven't before, or you are just presenting incredibly complex thoughts in a way that now I can understand that it would have been hard for me to understand otherwise. Poetry can do a lot of things, but ultimately, and people can debate this, but to me that's going to come down to like you're doing interesting things with words themselves, with language themselves, which some comedians do too, but they do it in a more kind of analytical fashion. And again, spoken word is just like, okay, either you have like a really interesting personality, and so I'm just going to like enjoy your personality, or you're telling stories, and again, that's all fine. But to me, almost everything is better if there's humor involved.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, I don't see why not be funny.
Yeah, and I think I've even I had an English in first year of high school. I had an English class where we were told to craft our own spoken word performance and poetry, and I did it, and maybe one other person, but like everyone else was telling these stories, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. But the same way with you, I was like, I feel like I gotta put some sort of a joke in here, or I gotta like act funny once, or like look at the audience and be like, right, or like just something that's like breaking something of the conventional form. And so I did that, and some other person did that, and I was like, that was fun. I like that and I like that there's room to do that too in that kind of format.
Yes, and that you like giving pleasure to other people in a particular kind of way.
Absolutely.
Like making someone laugh is you've just done something nice for
I
them.
love it so much, and it's what I talked about earlier of like at this point in my life too, especially because now I'm more aware of like what I maybe have a better way of reading social cues. If you laugh at me, you laughed, and I feel like I got a leg up on you.
Right.
Like I'm like, you laughed at all, even though I did this stupid thing, or like and you feel like you're better than me because you laughed in any way or whatever. It's like you still laughed, and like you said already, I caused you to do something that you maybe weren't planning on doing, or I made your body do something that you don't often think about.
Right.
Which is super fun to think.
Right.
I like that as a way to think about it.
I associated two things that you normally wouldn't associate, but I just put them together.
I put them together.
Yeah.
And regardless of if you understood or accepted my
Doesn't
association, your body did this thing.
Right.
Which I love. I love that perspective of it, because I'm gonna think about that every time I attempt to make someone laugh. Now I'm gonna go, oh my god, their head like jiggled a little bit, and their vocal cords caused this weird noise to come out of their mouth. It's a very scientific way of thinking about comedy, I think.
Yes, and it's going back to the spoken word thing. Like the spoken word is ultimately about the person doing the speaking. Like they have a thing that they want to tell you.
Yeah.
And it's very much about them, and you can go on their journey with them or not. Whereas comedy is really about the audience.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like if you didn't get the audience to in a way participate in the show, you failed. If you just go up there and you tell jokes and nobody laughs, you've failed.
Yeah.
It's not enough that it's you think this is funny or that this is stuff that you want to talk about. You have to, in a way, think about what is it that will appeal to other people? What is it that will bring certain things out of other people? And what is it that also can create a certain feeling of agreement, where if we all laughed at something, that means we all agreed about something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that feels good. That feels communal.
And
right?
it especially like these days, it's insane that a whole crowd of people can decide to agree.
Right.
Even if it isn't like we all talked about it and we all say that we agree. In that moment, your laugh tells me that you think it's funny.
Yes.
Some part of you thinks it's funny.
Yes. Which is
fun.
why when you're in a room and somebody says something and everybody laughs and you do not laugh, you just get this like, I don't belong in this room. And that could like, and sometimes in this kind of scary way, like you all thought that was funny. I don't want to be around all of you right now. Right. And then sometimes the opposite happens where it's like, I thought that was funny. I guess other people just don't get it.
Yeah.
Right. But it can be a great way of bringing people together.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm curious in the last few minutes that we have of our show, because I had mentioned this too, and I honestly, I've never really picked your brain about it, but like when you performed professionally, like the one time, what was that like? How was it?
That was all, again, that's from Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin's really my comedy person, and he does these shows in New York, and he has guests, and I got to be a co-host with him.
Oh, that's fun.
And it was just incredibly fun. We worked it all out kind of in advance, and there were things that I just had that experience of. I was in a room with him, and we were planning it out, and then we did it, and it worked, and people laughed, right? And just to be part of that whole process is enormous fun, and it's just the fun of also like a successful project. Right, that these things can be really logistically complicated, and yet you kind of pulled it off. And then also certain things that happened kind of on the fly, and we had kind of improvisatory moments, or we had things where just you're interacting to what's happening in the room at that particular moment. And Kevin's really smart in that he does these shows that they kind of have an academic side to them, so it fit that I was doing it with him, and I got to
makes
have
sense.
that part of it as well, because part of what comedy can do is inform, right? Like almost my entire political education was from comedians and comedy.
You can learn a
stuff.
lot more than you think you can. Yeah.
And this was another thing that I'm glad that we were coming back to this because I really wanted to talk about. As a child, I was fascinated that there were things that you could say about politics in a comedy setting that you could not say in a non-comedy setting.
Mm-hmm.
That there's just certain things where that's not appropriate, like on the news. Like you say something on the news and people are like, how dare you? Or they're like, that's not right. But then a comedian can make a joke about it. It's like, okay, we all
get it.
We all get it because it has to do with the fact that there's almost always an official, permissible what you're allowed to say. It's the same way that there are certain things that you can only do in a cartoon that you can't do in like a live action show.
Yeah, definitely. I get that a lot. The idea of like a certain medium allows you to say something, and while some people might be like, well, it was for the joke.
Right.
Regardless, you've said the thing, and some people might take that as truth because you want them to take it as truth.
Yes.
And that's what's also very dangerous about comedy, too.
Yes.
It's such a powerful tool, I feel like, because, like you said, you can educate a lot of people. You said basically your entire political education of, like, stuff has come from comedy.
Right.
But also, like, incorrect education and stuff that is, like, incredibly hateful and hurtful can come from comedy. That's what I interviewed for about 2 years ago for my paper when I was in ethics. I was like, what can be dangerous about this thing? And you were like, it is incredibly powerful, and you have so much responsibility as a comedian because you can cause an entire group to like become racist or become homophobic. You can be the thing that causes that if you say the wrong thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you can feed into what's bad about people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You can pick easy targets, or you can create a kind of bond with people in the room where we're all going to agree that there's a group of people who aren't in this room and we all can say mean things about them because they're not here.
Absolutely.
And it can. And the bad news is you can really form a strong bond with people around those kinds of things.
You can create like a family of sorts. Of, like we're connected by this thing.
If there's a particular, I mean, I think this happens in certain friend groups. If there's one person that we all can agree we hate, that's something we all share.
Yeah.
Right. Or if there's a particular personality type or whatever that we're all opposed to, then this is a way of bringing people together. You can do that.
Yeah.
Right. But you can also bring people together, just by, again, what I really like is pointing out things that people have noticed but not really thought about, and you kind of connect a lot of dots for them.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Or you just draw attention to the absurdity of certain situations, and you give the people the kind of release of like, yeah, let's talk about how absurd that is. Right?
Yeah. And I enjoy doing that. It's super fun.
Yeah.
That's our time.
Oh,
JP,
yeah.
and thank you so much for coming onto the
That's
show.
great.
This
Happy
is the most smart I've ever felt talking about comedy with a professor, a doctor in comedy. I know you're doctor. I know you
I'm not a doctor
PhD,
in
but I'm just gonna say that it is. It would be so.
My
fun.
dissertation was about Shakespeare's comedies, though, so
So
it's
fair
close.
enough. It got you there, basically.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming onto the
Happy to
show.
do it. Really
was
happy to
so
do it.
fun to do. I hope you keep creating comedians after I'm gone. It's
strange to think of it that being what it is.
You are
but in a way
creating
that is
stand-up
what it is.
comedians, yeah.
So I was looking for your podcast, and I found that you also did a podcast about your faith journey, and I was just going to come in and talk about my faith journey.
Oh my
the whole time
gosh.
until you come in, you're like, that's the wrong podcast.
My friend Nicole had a podcast. She's
Yeah.
still doing it.
Yeah.
I forget. Spiritual Uncertainty is what it's called. Go listen
Yeah.
to it. But it's incredibly fun. It was incredibly fun to talk about. And I think I probably snuck some comedy mention in
Yeah.
there. I think I
Right.
had to. But
Right.
that's a very fun thing. That my name comes up and it's like
I
this
know.
and then that, which is
Right.
such a. And then one semester, which is another project I did, which is like not a weird blend of that, but it's different from what it's like. I've done some polarizing stuff. I feel like on the
Yes.
internet. You look me up and I'm on like Huddle, which is like a sports social
Interesting.
media.
So you're just everywhere.
I'm everywhere. Hopefully I can stick to comedy though. I'm hoping to stay in the realm that I'm in for the rest of my life if I can. But thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I
It's
want
great
to
be
thank
here.
JP, and I also want to thank Andrew Mister for the use of this podcast theme song, Cruisin'. And my name is Jacob Marscola, reminding you to laugh, especially when it's funny.